what if this can pick up things like cover dies or stencils or embossing folders and turn these into stamps?
Tools are something that I don't ever really hesitate to buy when it comes to my crafting. After all, when you add a tool to your craft room, you generally open up a whole bunch of possibilities to do more with your supplies. I wasn't asked at all to promote this on my channel. I went ahead and bought it because I had seen an Instagram reel from Simon Hurley using this product. All I saw him do essentially was heat it up a bit, press it against a surface to get a texture, add some ink and spritz some water. That's all I know about it. I immediately have a couple of questions when I look at this tool. First of all, it comes with 4 of them. So does that mean that I can only create one design? So this $7 tool allows me to create 4 different stamps? Or can I reuse them? How cool would that be? Another question that I have is how detailed can they actually get? And can I combine them with other things in my craft room? For example, can I push it up against something like a stencil or an embossing folder to turn those tools into stamps? That would make my collection of stamps and embossing folders just go another extra mile. Would it work with a texture folder, for example, one of those 3D embossing folders? I'm kind of thinking it wouldn't because it would impress too much and then the stamp wouldn't press down. But I'm going to give it a try anyway. Anyway, let's get exploring and see what this can do.
Okay, so it's recommended to heat up your stamp foam between 10 and 15 seconds. I saw Simon Hurley using the heat tool from Ranger, the one that looks like a little hairdryer, so you want it on the lower setting if your heat tool can be set in a setting 1 or 2. Okay, so I heated up my foam, and this is the first texture I'm trying ever. My palm tree got a little bit too exposed to the cold, so I'm pretty sure it doesn't mind that I borrowed one of its branches, leaves. What are palm? You could totally tell I'm from northern Canada. I don't know the anatomy of a palm tree. Anyway, I found it got the middle branch quite well, but it didn't quite get the little leaves. So, hey, I'm testing out my first question. Can you reuse this? Yes or no? So I'm going to heat it up a little bit here with the heat tool and see what happens. And oh my God, you can use this more than once. How cool is that? The details just disappear. Obviously, the fainter lines disappeared a lot quicker than the line in the center, but I really love this tool even more because it's $7 and it's not just limiting me to each side of the stamp. I thought I could only get maybe 4, maybe I could use the back side and get 8. How cool is that? So I grabbed the other side of this branch, whatever you call a branch on a palm tree, and I put it into there and I got a much better texture this time. Look at that. How cool is that? Okay, so Simon Hurley obviously used his own inks, so a dye-based ink will work. I have some oxides here. I'm going to give this a try, even though these are a bit of a mixture of dye and pigment, and see how these work. So I'm just going to kind of swipe it on here. And I really have to say some of my previous craft knowledge has definitely helped in the past. So I know that when I smoosh ink onto my pads, I need to kind of smooth out the areas where they blend together. So you can do that with your finger, a sponge, a ink blending tool. You could use your paper towel, whatever. But you don't want to get those really harsh lines between the colors. Okay, I spritzed it with some water and now I'm going to see how it stamps. Now the thing about this tool is depending how high up you spray the water and how much water, you're going to get a different look. And looking at my stamp, I'm thinking I put a little bit too much on here. But hey, it's my first time ever trying and I'm just using a whole bunch of scrap papers from my scrap stash. And I can see here, it definitely was a little bit too much. I got a bit of a watercolor look here. So I'm going to try this again with a little less water. So I put 3 sprays and I was maybe about 8 inches above my surface. So let's try that again. Hit the rewind. I added 2 sprays, a little bit higher up this time. And let's see how it does this time with the stamping. So I got a definite watercolor look the first time, adding a bit too much water, and the details are definitely gone. This one here was 2 sprays from really far away, and I got a look, but it's pretty faded and grungy looking. So I'm guessing 2 sprays and a little bit closer up will do. So let's try it again and see what I get. Remember, it's all about experimenting. So the first time you're ever using tools, just grab a whole bunch of scrap paper and go nuts. Ooh, I like this look. This has definitely got a bit of that watercolor look, and it's got a lot of the details that I picked up in my stamp. The stamp foam seems to just clean up with a little bit of water and then a paper towel. You could probably use a microfiber cloth would be better because then you're not going to get any sort of like lints and fuzzies on the foam tool. Although isn't that what foam is? I don't know. Okay, I just heated up my tool again and it got rid of that whole pattern. How cool is that? Even when it's on fast motion, look how quickly it disappears. Only takes about 20-30 seconds and you're ready to go with a new stamp. What if this can pick up things like cover dies or stencils or embossing folders and turn these into stamps? That's going to make every single one of my craft supplies, pretty much, or 90% of them, more versatile just by spending $7. How cool is that? Okay, so I pushed it into this metal cover die, which is very, very detailed, and look how easy and gorgeous this turned out. This is going to give me the reverse image of my die though. So when I cut this, it kind of looks like a circle that's made out of 4 sort of like leaf patterns or petals. Now it's going to give me actually the reverse opposite of that. It's going to give me all the insides when I go ahead and stamp it. So I'm going to rub my ink on it and stamp it onto a sheet of paper. Here we go. Is this going to work with metal dies? And so I'm not pushing too hard because I do think I have quite a bit of water on here at the moment, but I don't think I have too much. So let's see. How cool is that? So I'm getting the reverse image in a pattern. And I think this has so much ink on it, I can keep stamping. So kind of like generational stamping. I'm going to fresh it up a little bit with some water, but I think I can keep stamping until the ink runs out. I mean, why not? Okay, so I'm going to stamp it a second time on another scrap piece of paper here and see how that turns out. And then you can stamp it again and again and again if you like. Ooh, I even like this second one better. It's almost like a gel print. The first print is always super vibrant, but the second one's always the best. Okay, I don't actually own a normal embossing folder anymore, I don't think. So I'm going to try a texture folder and see if this works. Remember, textures have different thicknesses, so I'm really curious as to how this will turn out. This is kind of like the necklace that I did as well. So I'm just curious to see how it's going to be. I mean, when I put the ink on it, it looks super gorgeous, but whether I'm going to get those details or not is kind of a whole different story. So I grabbed some blue, some purple, not forgetting, of course, to add a little bit of a mix in the center there, just so they blend together. And let's see what happens here when I lift this up. Am I going to get that beautiful design? And I have to say, most of that design stayed in there. So I'm really happy with the way that that turned out. And again, there's so much on here, keep stamping. Why not? Just be sure not to add too much water because you're going to get something that loses that detail and looks kind of like this. It's a bit of a hot mess. Okay, so I'm going to try now with my rubber stamp background. Now, why would I want to do this? Because I learned from my cover plate die that I would get the reverse image. What this is going to do is give me the reverse image of the stamp. So this is going to give me a look, I believe, that if I took and embossed this in white embossing powder and then ink blended over the top and did an emboss resist, I think it's going to give me that look, but just as a stamp without so many steps. What do you think? Okay, so I grabbed some navy ink, I spritzed it with some water, and let's see how this turns out. Remember, water and the distance away you are when you spray is always going to play a role in how detailed or not that your stamped impression is going to be. Okay, I'm going to lift this up. And yeah, you can see there's some spots with too much water, but you can see how you're going to get that embossed look. Okay, so this is the last supply that I'm going to try here, and that is a stencil. So I'm grabbing a stencil, just sticking it on my desk. And then let's see what happens when I go to do an impression. I'm really curious about this because stencils are so thin, whether it's going to give me the impression that I need. It's looking pretty good, I have to say. So when I emboss with a stencil, for example, so if I run it through my die cutting machine, a stencil over top of my cardstock, and I have the platforms lined up, you'll get a deboss look into your cardstock. It will make an imprint of your stencil into your cardstock. And I've shown that on my channel before. So I have a feeling that this might look something kind of similar, but added with color. So I wonder if that played a role because it's so thin in getting an impression. I wonder if I used something like a rubber mat and then pushed the foam into it, if I would get a better impression. So let's do that and then compare the two to see if it's worth putting it onto a rubber mat or some sort of piece of foam, a softer surface, so it has a little bit more bounce to it. Remember, stencils are so thin. I'm really curious if that's going to affect the foam or not. Okay, I stamped this down using the same colors as the previous one, and then let's compare them side by side. Okay, on the right was using my stencil directly on my desk surface, and on the left with the foam, and I don't find a huge difference, to be honest with you. Okay, so I'm just going to continue using a surface here from my table, and I have to say a few pros and cons about this tool. One, it's a little bit unpredictable in the sense that it really is based on how far away your water is and how much water you use and how much of a texture you're getting from your impression. And I also have to say that if your heat tool, if you want to go outside and grab an impression, you have to be able to heat the foam first. So you got to kind of bring back nature with you if you want to do impressions like that. So overall for me, I think I'm going to get the most use out of this tool by stretching the supplies that are within my craft room. But I like that I have the versatility to use textures from nature and things from around the house. So that's pretty cool. Now, I absolutely love the fact that this is going to stretch my dies. This is going to stretch my rubber stamp backgrounds. This is going to stretch my embossing folders and so many things that have a texture or a pattern in your craft room. So, do I think this tool's worth it? Absolutely. It's so much fun to just sit here and play, even if it does slip out of my hand once in a while. So let me know what you think about this tool, and happy playing if you have one yourself. Enjoy it and experiment. Have fun.